Coordination Committee. Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching at this news hour with Zanusa Ambini. I'm Ganharan. Thank you for joining us. Now the news in full. To stay tuned. The federal government and the members of the TPLF Peace Agreement Committee met for the first time at Halal Kella in the presence of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed held a consultation with the Peace Agreement Implementation Coordination Committee for the first time. During the discussion, the activities carried out on the implementation of the Pretoria and Nairobi peace agreements so far were evaluated and directions were set on the issue that need further attention. The members of the committee held their first face-to-face meeting with the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed at Halal Kella. In connection with the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed convening with members of the Peace Accord Implementation Coordination Committee, here I'm joined in the studio to tell us more about it with my colleague Daniel Kassaun. A very warm welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
So, what can you tell us about the meeting of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for the first time with the Coordination Committee of the Peace Implementation?
It's really history in the making that the Peace Agreement Implementation Coordination Committee, who convened for the past 2 days, have winded up their session with the presence of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and which is very special for this country. Imagine that Ethiopia has passed through 2 years of war in the northern part of Ethiopia, and peace has been brokered in Pretoria and in Nairobi. And the efforts of the committee is bearing fruits. And we heard that the committee had regular sessions in order to evaluate, in order to look into what's going on based on the peace agreement. And that has been formally seen today with their first ever session. What makes it so special is that the presence of Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed and also the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen. There were also Field Marshal Birhanu Jula from the federal government of Ethiopia, and from the other side there was a commander of the TPLF combatants, General Taddese Woreda, and there were team leaders from both sides. From the federal government side, we have the Secretary Advisor of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Redwan Hussein, and from the other side, from the TPLF side, we had Getachew Redda. They were present, and also heavyweight government figures were there. Peace Minister Binalf Andualam, he was also there, and others like Tamasgen Truna and Adam Farah, they were there. And the composition tells you that how determined and how genuine is the federal government of Ethiopia in order to retain the peace dividend from the Nairobi and Pretoria agreement. And always we find the federal government of Ethiopia being advocator of peace and adamant to gain peace from any effort it's doing. We remember what the federal government of Ethiopia has done in his first year's time, brokering peace with the Eritrean government, and also brokering peace with the opposition or the contesting parties. Now we see figures in the ministerial cabinet from the opposition parties. And also this government of Ethiopia has been instrumental in brokering peace in neighboring countries. Wherever there is a problem in Sudan or South Sudan or in Somalia or in other parts of neighboring countries, this government takes the lion's share to broker peace and to make the Horn of Africa, even the entire Horn of Africa, to be a peaceful continent and a peaceful region. So today's event was instrumental to assess what has been done so far per the agreement, and we're told that some issues were done very well, but there are still some issues which require prudent efforts from both sides to bring normalcy in the affected areas. So you can say that this has to be acknowledged very well, and it can be celebrated very well. Always we have to underline that the government of Ethiopia is always keen to pursue peaceful engagement with everyone. This has to be underlined very well. Lessons has to be drawn from the performance of this government, not only from today's event, but also the performance of this government in the past years. So we can say the current government of Ethiopia is a advocator of peace, in which everybody has to acknowledge it very well.
Danny, that's very interesting, and you've made the point very clear. But what is expected in the upcoming process with all the kind of efforts that the Ethiopian government has fully shown?
The tradition tells you that the government of Ethiopia is determined to make the country so peaceful. The other side also told that they are keen to have a peaceful region, a peaceful area. They want the restoration of the political situations. Economic situations are still require more efforts, and also the social, the economic, and the political activities are being restored. Infrastructure is being restored, but not fully. So there are things in the pipeline per the agreement, but a lot more remains to be done, because the 2 years war, you can imagine how it distracted the socio-economic and political situations of a given country or a given region.
Yeah, Daniel Kasson, thank you so much for shedding more light on this pertinent issue. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Now step into another news. A member of the diaspora community says that the diaspora community has relative potential in terms of public and digital diplomacy. So the government should use this potential, remembering the international pressure that Ethiopia has faced in terms of diplomacy in the last 2 years. The diaspora has the potential to create a better influence in terms of traditional diplomatic relations of countries, so the Ethiopian government can work closely with the diaspora community to achieve results in terms of public diplomacy and digital diplomacy. Johannes Fanton tells us the full story.
In international relations, countries use members of the diaspora community in different parts of the world to influence different countries and international institutions, or to make them respect their national interests, no less than the activities they do to protect their national interests through regular diplomatic relations. Many countries have succeeded in this regard, and Ethiopia is one of them. During his time with the TV, Daniel Nebiyu, the editor-in-chief of Abran, an Ethio-American digital media platform, said that the members of the Ethiopian diaspora community have different capacities to protect the national interests of their country, so the government should work closely.
The diaspora has certain comparative advantages compared to the formal diplomatic engagements that Ethiopia does. And some of those advantages are linguistic advantages. We speak the native languages of those countries wherever we are. People, Ethiopians in the Middle East speak really, perfect Arabic. Ethiopians in the United States speak English, or in Europe, whatever, French. So we have that comparative advantage, and we have to use that in support of our country, not in support of political parties or any kind of political ideology, but in support of our country. There's a distinction there.
Internationally, influential countries have different capacities to influence different countries, and as a developing country, Ethiopia should use the diaspora community as a soft power, according to Daniel.
Ethiopia is a developing country. It's a very underdeveloped country so far, so we don't have the coercive powers that certain countries have. So countries with military power, countries with media power, or countries with a diverse entertainment sector, or countries with resources like oil, we don't have those advantages. So our advantage is really in soft power. So our diaspora can kind of really fill those gaps. We can use our soft power where we don't have the same kind of capabilities in terms of international diplomatic engagements as some other bigger countries do. So our soft power is our diaspora. So really the government engaging with the diaspora and activating the diaspora to endorse Ethiopian interests, Ethiopian national interests. I think that's a very, very critical thing to do.
The editor-in-chief, who gave suggestions based on his own experience regarding digital media, said that since countries are using social media in a way that protects their own interests, Ethiopia as a country should build a social media platform to protect its national interests. For this, Ethiopian creative professionals should pay attention and work according to Daniel.
And I think it's important for, Ethiopia as a country to consider our own kind of social media platform. This will take time, but I think it's important because one of the things about social media and digital diplomacy is like those that control the platform kind of control the narrative. So if you're active on a foreign-based platform and you're trying to, diplomatically endorse your side of the story, those platforms are not necessarily open to everybody. As we've seen over the past 2 years, there were so many different Ethiopian Twitter accounts that were blocked, that were promoting Ethiopian perspectives, that were pro-Ethiopian. Some of them have been released, but some of them have not. So eventually, when push comes to shove, the people that own the platforms control the narrative. So that's something I think the state in this country and people that are innovative in this country, people that are in IT, in computer science and things like that have to consider.
Daniel also expressed that Ethiopia should work using various international languages in the mainstream media and that it can use the potential of the diaspora to make this a reality.
In other news, Ethiopian ambassador to Pakistan, Jamal Bakr, said that the economic and political relationship between the two countries will grow very fast as the Pretoria Peace Agreement between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF heralds peace and stability in the country. In his stay on ETV's Diplomatic Insight program, the ambassador said that the government of Pakistan has a strong desire to support Ethiopia's efforts on the rehabilitation activities in the northern part of the country. Yersalim Bazat tells us more on this.
Ethiopia and Pakistan have enjoyed a long-standing diplomatic relationship built over a decade in peace and security. According to Ethiopian ambassador to Pakistan, Jamal Bakr said both countries have shared collective responsibilities in peace and security.
We share a global, collective responsibilities in peace and security. So Pakistan and Ethiopia, our fellow, under the helmet of United Nations, they've fallen for the cause of, international peace and security. We have did this one in Somalia, DRCs, and we have been cooperating along this line. So this one will be more strengthened after this, and in a very synergetic way.
Following to the Pretoria Peace Agreement between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF heralds peace and stability in the country, the Pakistani investors have showed a strong desire to invest in Ethiopia in various sectors, the ambassador said. That's why Bakr said his embassy also working actively to promote Ethiopia's untapped investment potentials to Pakistani investors to invest in Ethiopia.
We're going to promote that Ethiopia's opportunities in a different, especially, the homegrown reform that has identified the pillar: agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing, mining, ICT, and tourism. So these are a sector where we are going to promote. The second also, the legal framework that is in place, especially ease of doing business and one-shop service, and the incentive package the Ethiopian government, especially after reform, has done. So we're going to inform them.
The ambassador reiterated that Pakistan has been standing with Ethiopia during those challenging times and believed that Ethiopia has the capability to address its internal challenges by its own. Similarly, Pakistan has also a strong desire to support the Ethiopian government efforts in the reconstruction and other developmental activities.
When I met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, His Excellency Bilawal Bhutto, he congratulated our government, and he expressed also his government's commitment to support Ethiopia throughout all this process. So that is one thing we have been given assurance from the government of Pakistan, and they are shown their commitment to support the Ethiopia's call for rebuilding. So they will leave no stone unturned from the government. They have been confirming for us to take part to rebuild this one.
Ethiopia imports mainly sugar products, rice, packaging bags, and medical supplies from Pakistan, while exporting cereals, tea leaves, spice, and textiles to Pakistan, according to Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Likewise, after the Pretoria peace agreement that was signed between the federal government of Ethiopia and TPLF, encouraging results have been registered in various parts of Tigray region. The federal government is showing its commitment to deliver humanitarian aids, commencing social activities, providing banking service, internet, health services, transportation, among others in war-torn regions. The federal government is taking its initiative to undertake the rehabilitation and reconstruction activities that was proliferating institutions in the Tigray region. Haftam Ashagri has compiled the full story, and take a look.
Ultimate responsibility for the implementation of this agreement lies purely in the hands of the people of Ethiopia, and it is my hope that coming from Pretoria.
This is a speech of Uhuru Kenyatta, who was the former president of Kenya, after the signed peace agreement between the federal government of Ethiopia and TPLF before 2 months. After the Pretoria peace agreement, the federal government of Ethiopia expressed its commitment to provide all social services in the state of Tigray. Over the past 2 months, thousands of loaded heavy trucks have been transported humanitarian aids, sales equipment, among others, to the people of Tigray.
About 30 teams from the Ministry of Health and various other institutions have been deployed in 2 rounds to Shire, Aksum, and Adwa to support the restoration of services. Other northern Ethiopia towns such as Koram and Alamata have also been targeted. So far, 12 hospitals and 28 health facilities have resumed services in the Alamata-Shire corridor all the way to Aksum and Adwa. 95% of the health delivery staff has also been redeployed.
በተጨማሪ እንግዲህ እነዚህን ጤና ተቋማት ስናስጀምር የሕክምና መሳሪያዎች ብዙ ሳይሰሩ የቆዩም የማይሰሩም ስላሉ
The maintenance team repaired equipment put out of use during the war. About 206 medical equipments have been repaired and put to use.
As part of this move, the federal government has expressed its commitment to bolster capacity to provide basic services to the people of Tigray. Other witnessing foreigners underlined that the federal government of Ethiopia is continuing its effort to support medical supplies to health institutions in Tigray region.
This is continued. I think that it is very good. But this seems to be the first step. Medicines also, the hospital says that it is not yet enough.
Following the signed peace agreement, the international community, non-governmental organizations and development partners have expressed their desire to extend support to the federal government of Ethiopia. They have also recognized and appreciated the commitment of the federal government in the realization of the signed peace agreement to bring sustainable peace in the region. The people of Tigray are also witnessing the support of the federal government of Ethiopia in providing humanitarian aid in war-torn regions. Information obtained from the federal government is showing that efforts are well in progress to provide other basic services in Tigray region.
The foreign ministers of Germany and France have expressed keenness to reinforce bilateral ties of their respective countries with
both ministers of France and Germany. They have great concern.
The Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed leaves no stones unturned.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and First Lady Zinash Tayacho hosted a Christmas luncheon
in laboratories in Tanzania and Nairobi.
And Yalen's travels, according to PBS News Hour, will take her from business incubators for entrepreneurs in Senegal.
Today, we welcomed the newly appointed Chinese Foreign Minister, King Gang.
It's a unique and spectacular ceremony that must be preserved.
And the people are coming and showing their interest about how to celebrate Epiphany.
Chairperson of the National Election Board of Ethiopia, Burtukan Mideksa, declares all the necessary preparations are done to undertake a referendum in 6 zones in 5 districts that were under Southern Nations, Nationalities and Peoples region. If supported by the inhabitants in the respective zones and districts, the referendum slated on February 6 becomes a green light to establish a new region. The move is in light of the constitutional principles in the federal system in order to ensure the fair share of the respective people. Daniel Kaso once again has the full story.
In last August, the House of Federation has given green light for 6 zones and 5 districts that were under the Southern Nations, Nationalities and Peoples region to hold a referendum and establish a new region if supported by the inhabitants. It also instructed the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia to conduct a referendum within 3 months consequently. All the necessary preparations are put in place to hold the referendum. Chairperson of the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia, Burtukan Mideksa, urges the leaderships at all levels and the security entities to provide all the necessary support for the finalization of the referendum peacefully and democratically.
Registration of the electorates has so far been completed in the 3,769 polling stations. What is better in this election is more awareness works have been undertaken for the smooth process of the referendum day on February 6th. Discussion and argument forums were done successfully. Monitoring and evaluation teams have been doing the preparations very well. We are pretty sure that all the necessary preparations are put in place accordingly.
The chairperson also recalled the experiences drawn from the referendums undertaken in Sidama and Southwest regions would help this one more effective.
Our teams are well prepared to address challenge of the unprecedented mishaps which might arise through the polling process. Swift measures will be provided to make a fair and clear referendum. We have been able to correct some problems with the executives and our teams deployed there. We are passing through new experiences.
The leaderships at all levels and security entities are ready to provide all the necessary supports for the finalization of the referendum peacefully and democratically.
Welcome to the land of origins. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia is pleased to serve all your traveler banking needs. If you have money from any of these 16 countries, you can convert it to local currency by visiting our nearest branch. Alternatively, our secure Forex ATMs accept cash exchange, or if you prefer using your cards, we've partnered with Visa, MasterCard, and UnionPay so that you can withdraw cash from our local ATMs or make cashless transactions at thousands of local POS partners securely and with confidence. We are linked with more than 700 global banks through our direct SWIFT address, CBE Teta. We also work with 16 international money transfer agents, out of which Tune and World Remit enable you to make direct deposits into our savings and current accounts or our popular CBE Burr mobile wallet. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, the bank you can always rely on.
81 years ago, horse riders in the Awi zone of the state of Amhara established the Sabatbet Agao Equestrian Association. Today, more than 60,000 horse riders are members of the association. By the end of January, the association annually conducts a horse riding parade and show in Enjibara town. The Sabatbet Agao Horse Riders Equestrian Association was established by people of the local who were fighting the Italian invasion.
Yawi Mahaver Maletna. Yawi Hizv Mahaver Maletna.
The annual horse riding festival is probably the largest horse riding festival on the planet. Horse is an integral part of the Agao life. The Agao used their horses for transport, for weddings, and the horse race as well. It was during the brutal invasion of the fascist Italy that the Agao on their horsebacks repulsed the enemy's aggression. The Agao Horse Racing Festival is celebrated colorfully in Enjibara, seat of the Awi Agao administrative zone of the state.
አንደኛ ይወጡ ነበር አባትሽ እሺ
እና ከዛለኝ እሱን አይቼ እኔ መልመድ ፈልጌ አልምደይ ስለው አልመደኝ
የፈረስ ማን ነው ሻንቆ ነው ይባላል እንዴት ነው ጉልበቱ ጎበዝ ነው
አዎ ምንም አይደለም
ተለማምደሻል ለዚህ ዝግጅት ስንተኛ ትወጫለሽ
አንደኛ እወጣለሁ ብዬ ሞክራለሁ
You're still watching at this news hour now, moving to another domain. Ambassador Tracy Ann Jacobson, charged the affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia, paid a courtesy call on Foreign Affairs State Minister Ambassador Misganu Arega on Thursday. During their discussion, the State Minister noted the long-standing relationship between Ethiopia and the United States and stressed the need to revitalize it with expanded engagements. He commended the U.S. for its support for the AU-led Pretoria peace deal between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF. He stated that the government of Ethiopia is fully committed to implementing the terms of the peace deal and called on the United States to provide support for reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts, reiterating Ethiopia's commitment to address the issue of human rights violation via the transitional justice system. Ambassador Misganu asked the United States to support Ethiopia's bid in terminating the mandate of the highly politicized International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia. Ambassador Tracy Ann Jacobson, for her part, appreciated the implementation of the Pretoria peace deal over the last 3 months and highlighted the U.S. government concerns on issues related to accountability. Meanwhile, Russian ambassador to Ethiopia, Evgen Trekhin, made a courtesy call on Foreign Affairs State Minister Ambassador Misganu Arega on Thursday. Ambassador Misganu stated that Ethiopia values its historical and friendly relationship with Russia and emphasized the importance of diversifying bilateral cooperation in multiple sectors. In this regard, the two parties discussed the implementation of signed Memorandum of Understanding as well as the importance of active monitoring of their bilateral agreements in various sectors. They discussed measures to renegotiate the Joint Ministerial Commission meeting between Ethiopia and Russia, as well as issues concerning the forthcoming Second Russian-African Summit.
Welcome to the land of origins. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia is pleased to serve all your traveler banking needs. If you have money from any of these 16 countries, you can convert it to local currency by visiting our nearest branch. Alternatively, our secure Forex ATMs accept cash exchange, or if you prefer using your cards, we've partnered with Visa, MasterCard, and UnionPay so that you can withdraw cash from our local ATMs or make cashless transactions at thousands of local POS partners securely and with confidence. We are linked with more than 700 global banks through our direct SWIFT address, CBE Teta. We also work with 16 international money transfer agents, out of which Tune and WorldRemit enable you to make direct deposits into our savings and current accounts or our popular CBE Birr mobile wallet. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, the bank you can always rely on.
I love the patterns. One of these. You can see the outside of the mosque here. Nearly 50,000 people call the Casbah home, and it's been inhabited since the 2nd century AD. It's all a UNESCO World Heritage Site too. Walking through and suddenly seeing all these views of the Mediterranean and the city in the distance. Many cities around Algeria have their own Casbahs, including Gardea, which I'll be visiting later on in the trip, but here, the biggest one you'll find in Algiers.
Another development news, talking to Ethiopian news agency, hotel owners in Addis Ababa stated that the upcoming African Union Summit in Addis Ababa will create an opportunity to further develop the tourism sector. Accordingly, it is to be recalled that the tourism conference, which was hit hard due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the conflict in Ethiopia, has revived after peace agreement reached. The hotel owners also said that the hosting of the African Union Conference in Addis Ababa will create a room to further enhance the sector, adding that they have finalized their preparation to welcome the guests with Ethiopian with exhibiting good hospitality. These hotel owners further explained that the activity of hotels is currently at a wonderful traffic and many tourists have come to Addis Ababa during the celebration of Ethiopian Christmas and Epiphany celebration. It has also been indicated that the revival in the hotel sector, especially in the last 5 months, is promising that visitors who had cancelled their flight to the country prior to this are making requests to come again. And since the start of the war in Syria, millions of people have been affected. And for those with disabilities, it is even more challenging. But an international charity is trying to change the fact. Every family among the residents of Al-Nur has at least one member who is visually impaired. Habtam Washagre has compiled the full story from TRT World. Have a look.
Life in the war zone is always tough.
But for some it's especially difficult. Qutaiba Al-Jarad still remembers a time when he could support his 4 children.
I was injured in 2014 during an aerial bombardment and suffered an optic nerve injury. I lost my sight and everything just went black. I used to support my children in the past, but now I am unable to do anything in this life. We came here to the Al-Nur camp for the blind in northern Syria in 2014. We stayed here and we are still waiting for things to get better.
The Al-Nur village for the visually impaired has been a welcome haven for the family. Al-Jarad is thankful he has a place to stay, but says much more is still needed. The residents gathered daily at the mosque. They are all blind, even the imam and the Muzman. They all share similar stories for their displacement and loss. Hussein was born blind. He graduated from law school and was soon to be a lawyer when the war forced him from his hometown.
We need 3 things. We need health aid, food aid, and financial assistance. People here can't afford to buy anything. The most important thing is health assistance, because we have a dispensary already built, but it needs a staff that can work there to help the blind. Our number has increased to 100 families now.
The village houses 100 families. The roads are paved and each housing unit features identification panels with embossed lettering. Easily readable by tough, every family has at least one member who is visually impaired.
We have 2 types of blind people here. Blind from birth and others who have lost their sight because of the war. From my observations, I can say that the situation is more difficult for those who lost their sight during the war, as they suffer from psychological problems. Some of them here have even attempted suicide because they cannot adapt to their disability.
The residents of Al-Nur with a blind or sighted have become accustomed to all sorts of darkness, but still have hope for the future. They say even if a person loses their sight, they need not lose their vision.
And finally, Israel and Sudan have finalized a deal to normalize relations with a signing ceremony expected following a transfer of power from the military to a civilian government in Khartoum, the Israeli foreign minister said on Thursday. Sudan's foreign ministry earlier said the deal was agreed during a visit by Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen to move forward towards normalizing relations between the 2 countries. The leaders discussed ways to establish fruitful relations between the 2 countries and prospects of cooperation in areas including security and energy. Upon his return from Khartoum, Cohen said that the 2 countries had agreed to work towards a peace agreement. Thursday's talks also touched briefly on achieving stability and peace between Israel and the Palestinian. Sudan, an Arab League member, had for decades maintained a rigid anti-Israel stance. This changed after a long-time President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in April 2019 following mass protests against his rule. In January 2021, Sudan signed a declaration paving way to normalize ties with Israel. In April that year, it approved a bill abolishing a 1958 boycott of the country. And now a reminder of the top story once again. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed convenes with members of the Peace Accord Implementation Coordination Committee. You've been watching at this news hour with the Nusam Binam Gitana. Thank you for joining us and goodbye for now.